listen to me. I'm going to make you as comfortable as I can, but you ain't going to be totally comfortable. So get hip to that already. In other words, I'm sure it's going to be cool. So, and I'll work with you, so don't get frustrated about nothing. I'll work with you on any level. So, right now, let me just run the track. Just listen to the track, okay? Just listen to the track.
It's Decatur FM. We are any and everything Decatur. Thank you so much for listening. And thank you so much for being patient during our heated conversations. You know, this is one of the reasons why I started this platform. Because we are going to have some conversations that are going to make people uncomfortable. And I think it's very needed right now in order for us to somehow or the other get to a solution on any and everything. But every now and then we kind of just sit back and we do other things. Like we invite Decatur residents into the studio, and we sit and we hear their story, talk to them, because I've always said that people in this neighborhood have some interesting stories. Some people I have met, some people I haven't, and the people that I haven't, I'm looking forward to it. But we all got to start somewhere, so I start with everybody that I know. Gentleman that you heard earlier that was schooling us on his thoughts.
Right.
His name is Matthew Rose. He is a Decatur resident. He is a Ironman athlete, coach, and everything else in between. This guy is from Memphis, Tennessee. He was the assistant swim coach over at Stanford during his lifetime. This is his life resume I'm giving you guys. Did women's swimming, right?
Women's swimming.
Okay. Then went to Arizona State, did men and women's. Assistant coach, right?
Yep.
Worked with a couple Olympians. Your sister.
My sister being one of them.
Is an Olympic swimmer. I've always wanted to be an Olympic swimmer. I just sink. We'll talk about that later. He's you've done 8 Ironman finishes, 4 trips to Kona.
Yes,
right?
sir. Yeah.
For world championships. World championship, right?
Yep.
And you've had you did 7th. I remember that 7th overall at Ironman Louisville for amateur. And you have a whole bunch of other.
No, I included the pros, man.
Huh?
My 7th overall, including the pros.
Yeah. He's an overall. Close your kids' ears. He's an overall badass. That's pretty much what he is, right? So I'll tell you a quick story, and then we'll get into him. So I actually started doing triathlon some years ago, and I would go to my swimming workouts at a really cool spot here in town called Dynamo, right? Over on. What is it? I keep forgetting. Shamley?
Shamley. Off Shallowford Road.
Shallowford Road. I should remember that. And I was training with another coach, but I always heard about this dude, who's this, really, stud. His name's Matthew Rose. I was like, I need to get with that dude because I need him to train me, right? And we finally met, and we hit it off. And come to find out, we lived in the same neighborhood, so it made all the sense in the world. And he's trained me for a couple of races. The last one being the Publix Marathon that I just did this past spring, which was brutal, by the way. But I wanted to have him in because he was one of the first people that I talked to about doing Decatur FM. I was like, I got this idea for the station. What do you think? Blah, blah, blah. And he was like, this is great. And I was like, you have to be on this show. And he was like, done. So I was like, I wrote him in, and I'm glad he's here. Thank you for coming in. I thought you were going to bail on me this week.
No way, man.
All right?
No way.
But he didn't. So welcome to the actual studio. Let's get off the subject of politics for a second. And let's just talk about just you, your story, how you got to Decatur, what you're doing now.
Yeah.
Right? And I titled the hour just going the distance, right? Because that's what I've done with you. It's just we've just gone the distance, just like whether it's, 26.2, 70.3, the athletes, whatever it is, you go the distance. But with going the distance with endurance, that could be applied in so many different ways. Going the distance in life, going the distance in just building a better community, and how it all relates. We've had a lot of conversations over the past 2 weeks just about doing that and the grit and the mindset that it takes to just go the distance, not just in the sport, right? But just in everything overall. But I want to dumb it down and draw it back to kind of like what we were talking about with the politics of what you do, right, for a living, what you do for some of us as athletes, right, and how we kind of take what we learn and we kind of translate that into life. So let's start with this. How long have you been living in the city?
14 years.
14 years.
My wife and I moved here in 2004. She She was looking at law school. She got into Emory.
Mm-hmm.
We both have family in the Southeast.
Mm-hmm.
Seemed like a great move. We were ready to get back. We were living in Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
So we moved down here in 2004. At the time, I was a management consultant.
Right.
I was not coaching.
Right. So you were corporate America.
Corporate America.
Okay. Why'd you choose Decatur?
I went for a run while she was in the middle of a week. We came down for admitted students weekend. She's in the middle of some class function with these admitted students. I went for a run, and I ended up at the corner of Eastlake and Oakview over here, and I thought this whole Oakhurst Square thing was really cool.
Yep.
Saw a house that was for rent on Eastlake.
Mm-hmm.
Came back from that run, told my wife, if we're gonna live here, I got the place we're gonna live, and that's how it ended up.
That was history.
That was it.
I'll tell you a funny thing. Talking to every single neighbor, there's amazing things that happen when you go on runs in Decatur. I'll tell you, between moving here, starting radio stations, and everything else. But anyway, so you're working for this. You were a consultant. Why the switch? Well, obviously we know the history,
Right.
but why drop being a consultant to say I want to coach again?
No, that's a great question. So I think what happened was prior to being a consultant, I'd been a coach. So I'd coached at Stanford, coached at Arizona State. And just to provide some backdrop on that, I coached at Stanford 97 through 99.
Mm-hmm.
So that was right after I graduated from college. I'm out in Silicon Valley, and I'm looking at people. I also, just to make ends meet, to live in Silicon Valley on a coach's salary was really hard. To make ends meet, I worked at a startup there. It was like a precursor to WebMD.
Right.
But I'm watching all these people who are my age making millions of dollars overnight,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So at some point, I thought to myself, this coaching thing can wait.
Right.
I'm going to
make my millions.
Yeah,
I'm going to get my silver bullet.
I'm going to go do something.
I want my silver bullet.
Right. So I sold out.
Right.
I sold out as a 24-year-old.
That's okay.
It's okay, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's realistic,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So, and then there was an opportunity to come back to coaching, and so
you got back into coaching, and then was Dynamo Multisport born at that point? Was that the deciding factor? I want to get back into coaching, but I kind of want to do my own thing. Like, obviously, your coaching prior to that was done under different umbrellas, right? You under the collegiate umbrellas,
right,
and so on and so forth. So what made you decide to jump out of that and just kind of, I want to create this space? Because like you literally created a very small niche of like what I will always consider like elites, whether you are or not. Like I always said, to give you guys, to put it in perspective, like you get into the Dynamo world, the Go Green world, I mean, you're something to say. You're pretty badass. I was happy. I actually think that I got in due to affirmative action, but that's just me. And we joke like that, just so you know. But so what made you decide to do that? Triathlon, you went from swimming to doing to coaching a 3-sport kind of gig.
Yeah.
What's your thinking behind all of this?
I think there was one day, and I know exactly when it was. I'm in the office at a client's office and working on a project, and at the time I'm 32 years old.
Yeah.
And I'm seeing some of the senior guys on the team who ironically are now my age.
Right.
And I'm looking at them and I'm going, I don't want to do this when I'm that age.
Right.
I can't do this.
Yeah.
So I knew then I knew then I had to do something different.
Mm.
And that also coincided with the first trip I ever made out to Kona to compete in Hawaii. And when I went out there, I just caught the bug. I was like, man, this is awesome.
Now, when you went out to were you coaching at that point or no? Just competing.
Just competing.
Okay.
So when I got back, what I did was I started working with 2 or 3 people, coaching, writing their programs for triathlon.
How'd you pick them, or how'd they pick you?
They kind of came to me.
Okay.
Unfortunately, though, that's kind of the way this triathlon coaching thing works. Is people usually approach you if you're a good athlete. They usually approach you.
Like I did with them. Yeah, there you go.
Well, and I would rather look at the resume from a coaching perspective. because sometimes the best athletes aren't the best coaches.
True.
That's true.
You know, Kevin McHale didn't last long in the NBA as
That's
a
true.
head coach,
That's
right?
very true. Yeah.
You know, the only person I can really think of is Larry Bird, was really been the best, you know.
So what made
great
you
athlete
what
coach.
made you think you'd be a good coach?
I like people.
Okay.
You know, I like working with people to help them realize their potential. But that's not just as athletes, but just as people.
Right.
You know, this act of realization.
Right.
So I tell people frequently when I'm about to start working with them, or if we're talking through, hey, is this a good fit or not? I tell them, I'm not. If you want a yeller or a screamer, you want someone who's going to ride you because you missed this workout. I'm not that guy. You know, especially dealing with amateur triathletes. I hold the professionals that I coach to a different standard.
Yeah.
But I'm not that guy, because there's way too many things that are more important. I want you to be a good human being, good partner, good professional, you know, good athlete. But that all has to work as much as possible with all those different elements in your life.
So, and believe me, that's very true. A lot of my workouts that he's called, you know, it's straight like Christmas or whatever, like take the day off, be with your family. Like that's your workout plan. Like you look at it and you go, all right, tomorrow's Christmas Eve, or it's the day before Christmas, what I got to do? And you look at Matt's thing and he's like, just be with your family. Like, what do you mean? I need to be out there getting it. But,
With the wolves.
you know, so I get that. But with that being said, the mindset, right? Once you've explained that to us, right? How do you get us into the mindset of, because believe me, and I'm just speaking from experience with you, and I think this is what makes it such a great conversation, great interview, because I've actually experienced it with you. I actually sat with you, and I obviously want the silver bullet. I want to be one of your pro athletes. Like, I'm not, but, you know, I see them, and I see what they do, and I see their capabilities, and I go, I want to do that, right? But it's all a process.
Mm-hmm.
How do you prepare that person? If you're a people person and you're a great coach and so on and so forth, how do you get us into the mindset of, this is how we roll? Like, this is what you need to be thinking, right? Jumping into this. Because obviously, Lance Armstrong always said, and not just regardless of all the stuff he always said that endurance athletes are running from something, right? I try to turn that and say we're running towards something, which is the finish line, but they're running from something,
Right.
whatever it is, right? So we all enter into this space for whatever reason, whether it's health, whether it's trying to be better, just more focus, what have you. But there's something that when I enter into that coaching arena with you, it kind of changes, because my mindset is kind of, you know, I want to be this, and I'm going to be, regardless of whatever I'm going through, health, whatever, I just got to be better at this. And then you kind of take it like, whoa, slow down. Here's what we got to do, right? So my question to you is, with the coaching portion of things, like, how do you get the person into that mindset of, all right, cool, I need a balanced life? Like, what do you tell them? What do you do? How do you conduct the workouts? You know, is it, you know, you said it earlier, it's not, you know, you're not going to scream at them, but are the workouts like, I'm going to go balls to the wall? Blah, blah, like, how do you prepare them for that transformation of trying to make them a well-rounded person? Because that's essentially what you're trying to do, right? Like, they come to you with I wouldn't say a problem, but, you know, here's what I want to do, right? And you say, in order for us to get from A to B, it's not just about the race, but it's about everything else. But within your workouts, how do you, like, get their mindset right for that?
Right.
You know, is my question to you.
Well, I think that's different for everybody.
Right.
And I think the most important thing you can do, the most important skill as a coach, is being able to shut up and listen.
And you think most coaches don't do that?
No. I think most your everyday coach probably doesn't do that.
He more so dictates.
Exactly.
You know, to you.
You need to be able to listen, or she needs to be able to listen.
Right.
You know, there's a process of getting to know a person and finding out, to go back to the quote you used about Lance Armstrong, to go back and say, what are you running towards, as opposed to what are you running from?
Right.
What are you running towards? what's driving this person to go on whatever journey this is. And the more you peel back and find a little bit more about what makes that person tick, that's what you start pressing on. And you start using that information, using that knowledge to say, all right, we're going to be better here in our workouts, but how can we apply that then to what I know about you in this area of your life? You know, I've had so many conversations with our amateur athletes. I've had so many conversations with our amateur athletes just about their professional lives, even about their personal lives, you know, because that's important to me.
I started doing yoga quite a bit recently, right? And I'm saying that to get back to what you just said. One of the things that I've learned from yoga instructors recently is a lot of times when you get resistance in your practice, a lot of times it's reflected to resistance going on in your life, right?
Absolutely.
So as you get to know your athletes, and this goes back to the title of the show, going the distance, like actually going the distance with this person to get them towards whatever they're running towards. How much of when they actually get into it and you start peeling away those layers, you find like, all right, that's what's holding you back. Like here, like for me, just speaking from experience, you know, a lot of times I'm all gun ho, and then halfway in, the negative self-talk comes in.
Yep.
Right? I can't. I'm hurting. I don't want to. What about this? What about that? I start analyzing, right? And Arthur Ashe always said, the more you analyze, the more you paralyze, right? When you go through those ripping apart of the layers to find out the true core of this person and what it's going to take to get him well-rounded, and, you know, dealing with what's at hand, what it's going to take to get him to run that 26.2, that 13.1, 5K, whatever it is, right? When you find that, how do you handle it? Like, is it and I know everybody's different, but how do you approach fixing whatever it is, because you see if you can fix that? I mean, you're good as golden for the finish line.
Right.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, is there a certain way that you deal with it? Is there a certain speech, lecture, you know, good old coach conversation that you have with these people, amateurs and pros? Or is it one of those things where you find it and you kind of try to fine tune it yourself versus, you know, I know what he's thinking here, so I'm going to tweak his workout to do this. So it subliminally does it versus having a straight conversation with him.
No, these are great questions. Look, this happens as a coach, it happens over time, but what you try to rely on is once you've listened, once you feel like you're getting to the essence of what's going to make this person perform, both physically and mentally. Once you get there, you take note of how you got there, and the next athlete you're dealing with, or I may have learned this with this athlete A. I got athlete B over here. They're struggling with something completely different. But what can I learn from athlete A that I can apply to athlete B and see if that works? Look, man, it's an iterative approach. The human body isn't a stock car.
No, it's not. We've learned that.
You know?
Yeah.
The brain is not a stock car.
Yeah.
We're not consistent person to person to person.
But we think we are.
We do. You know, all these studies that come out about, you know, oh, you drink 2 glasses of wine a day, you know, caffeine does this, you know, all that stuff I think is probably directionally relevant, but it doesn't apply to everybody. And I think as a society, we like having nice, clean packages. We like to be able to go through and we like to be able to order something on Amazon and it's delivered 2 days later right to our front step.
I have a question then relating to that.
Mm-hmm.
When you're coaching, let's say at Stanford, and you're coaching, let's say 5-6 kids, versus you're coaching, let's say a Mike. He has his allotted time. You know what I mean?
Right.
He has his allotted time. You know, you have a fold on him. You know what he's supposed to do when he's away from you versus when he's there. Versus coaching 6 kids, all different backgrounds, different mentality, different. How does that challenge you as a coach?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, in a group training environment, that's challenging because you want everybody to be better because they're together, but oftentimes you're managing egos, you're managing different places in the season with different people and different priority events, and you got to separate people. These two people will beat each other into the ground, but we can't have them both beating each other in the ground right now. Mm-hmm. So, this one athlete, I might put her over in lane 7. This other athlete, I'm going to have to put over in lane 2, just so they're not racing against each other constantly.
That's where the ego comes in.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Believe me, I can't tell you how many times I go to practice and I'm racing all the time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then we have a saying that we tell our athletes: just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Sure, right.
Yeah.
I think when I learned back when I used to be able to do more than 2 push-ups, I learned to race against the elements, not the people. Whether we are there with me, if we're gonna run 100 meters, I just want to get to the ribbon. I don't care what the guys besides me are doing.
Yeah, a lot of times.
Both in practice and in. I'm not practicing against you. I'm just practicing to be better. Because I realized on the field when the coach said 10 push-ups, most people thought they had 8.
Here's a question based on what he said. So then you take that and you flip that into regular life. If we're, you got to put me in lane 7, you got to put the other person in lane 3 so we're not racing. Do you think a lot of times that's how we attack life too as well? When we don't need to always be on the guard racing, right? Just because I can doesn't mean I should, right? But do you think a lot of people look at it from a standpoint of just because I can, I think I will?
Yeah, without a doubt. Look, what's nice about sport is sport's a nice, clean metaphor for life, in my opinion, right? Yeah. The stakes aren't nearly as high.
Sure.
Right? But performance, both in sport and in life, to me is a pretty simple equation. It's stress. So when I say stress in a sporting perspective, it's the training, what kind of training you're doing, volume, intensity, duration, frequency. All right. In life, stress is how am I challenging myself? Am I seeking those different opportunities at work that are going to stretch me so that I learn different skills and I'm interacting with different people so that I get the skills necessary to advance along in my career.
Yeah.
All right. Stress and then recovery, and this is where I think people do not focus at all on, both athletes and professionally in life, right? How many people do we know? I mean, dude, you got 1 million balls in the air, right? Mm-hmm. You got your normal job. Mm-hmm. You got this labor of love, which is awesome. Mm-hmm. You got your family. Mm-hmm. At what point do you drive yourself into the ground, or do you take a step back and say, you know what, we need to take a breather here?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because that's the only way to then get the adaptations you need to advance. Stress, recovery, adapt.
You've been, and I hate to bring this up because it's probably something that you've been titled with. I don't know if you like it or don't, but, and just for those listening that are not necessarily in the industry or in the sport, the way we operate is, we on our workouts we do it with zones. So there's zone 1, there's zone 2, zone 3, zone 4. So and that just it's based on like heart rate and effort. Like zone 1 might be like 0 to 100. I'm just making something up. And zone 2 might be 100 to 130 beats a minute. You've been always known as what we call the zone 2 coach, right? Mm-hmm. And that means that you operate in a certain parameter of effort, heart rate wise, if you would call it, or power wise if you're riding a bike. Why were you tagged with that in the first place? Yeah. Like, what got you that, and why is that? Like, is that part of your philosophy? Is that important? Why is that important? I've always wanted to know, because I've always felt, and I've got a couple neighbors on my block, a couple of runners that have always said, like, listen, man, if I'm not going 100 miles an hour, I ain't working.
Right.
And that's not good.
Right.
translate that to life, I'm pretty sure that works the same way in the regular life too as well.
Absolutely.
But why the Z2? Why that less than? I always look at it as less than optimal effort. It's more of a chill effort. But why have you chosen to do that as part of part of the philosophy in your training?
Z2, steady state, that engenders consistency. All right. If I am making sure that the steady stuff and the easy stuff is just that, easy and steady, I can do that day after day after day after day. When you accumulate fitness over the course of time, that's much more valuable than going out there on Monday. I got an easy day. I go really, really hard, feel great because I did it. Tuesday, you know what? Now is my hard day. I do that. I go really, really hard, doing great. Wednesday, now I've got 2 days in a row of hard stuff. Wednesday, I'm supposed to do another hard day. Well, now I got nothing left. And what's the reason why? It's because you just did all the easy stuff too hard. So you then have to take a day off. Maybe you have to take the next day off. So there's no consistency that's built. Z2, going easy, going steady when it's time to go steady. All right? That allows you to repeat these efforts over and over and over again. I always tell people we go easy and steady in order to go hard later on.
So that's the question. If you consistently, because that's what we're talking about, consistency.
Consistency.
If you consistently go at that rate, at that Z2 steady rate, when it is time to go hard, can you? And can you sustain that hard effort? Translated into life. We've talked about him. I actually follow him quite a bit. We talked about David Goggins as an example, right? This is a Navy SEAL motivator and another guy that I look up to and just overall badass, that he preaches, you got to suffer. You have to suffer. You suffer, you callous your mind. You callous your mind, you make your body healthy, you can basically become invincible. That's why he calls him, instead of David Goggins, he's Goggins, right? Two different schools of thought, right? And the question is, for you, when you do the Z2, when you apply that Z2 mentality, what happens when on the course or in life, we'll deal with on the course right now, things require you to push hard, right? Have you adapted to that based on your philosophy? Mm-hmm. Can you adapt to that? And can you sustain it? Like if I need to, I really need to push it now because I'm trying to do a PR or what have you, or is that going to break me down because my body hasn't adapted to pushing as hard for as long?
For sure.
Is my question.
Yeah. Look, when my reputation as this whole Z2 coach, it's a little bit of a misnomer because, number one, if you're able to do everything that I would like you to do, if you don't have the constraints of your professional life and your personal life, what I'm looking for is about an 80% mix of that steady state stuff. The other 20% is really, really hard. So to go do that really, really hard stuff, you have to make sure that other 80% is nice and mellow.
Now, does that work? Because when it's time to come back to the steady state after pushing yourself, the recovery is a lot quicker and easier and faster?
Without a doubt. And the other thing is, Mike, if you're doing 80% of steady state stuff, but you're doing it 20, 22 hours a week, that's hard. Trying to juggle all that you have going on in your life. And I'm giving you an example of what an elite Ironman athlete would be doing.
Yeah.
About 20, 22 hours a week.
That's a lot.
And, they're doing it week after week after week after week. If you're doing anything more than 20 to 30% of intensity, you're not going to be able to handle the sheer stress of the volume as, the thing that's weighing really down on you. Right. So, everybody's different. Everybody's got different constraints. When you look at an athlete and you're talking to an athlete, what are your goals? What are your constraints? Constraints for an amateur athlete, professional and personal life. How much time can you really devote to achieving your goal? That's how you start playing around with a mix of how much Z2 do we do? How much, intensity do we do? But all in all, as a coach for endurance sports, and this is anything that's really, honestly, anything that's over 15 minutes of work, we're just trying to engage these athletes so they can just be consistent over and over and over again.
And that translates into life. I mean, I think you learn a lot of that consistency.
I have an example, and I'm sure you guys have heard it. I'm going to say it in the way I remember it in different terms. Like a coach had a student, and they said to them, I want you to do 1 push-up a day for the next week, till the next week when we meet. Guy looks at the coach and says, man, I can do 50. Coach tells him, just do 1. The 49, that's your choice.
Yeah.
And basically what he was trying to say is, you could probably do 60, but I don't want you to do 60 over the next 7 days. Do 1. If you do 60, fine. And that's to build that consistency.
Absolutely.
Have you ever had an athlete at the end of the day that you know that was capable of doing X, but they would just give you less than X?
Yeah.
And you just couldn't understand because it's like everything is there to say that you can accomplish this. Why can't you? Is that, and then do you look at that and wonder, like, all right, if you can't do this, what is going on elsewhere that's preventing you?
No doubt. No, I mean, again, when you're dealing with primarily amateur athletes, and right now I'm coaching 16 people. 3 of those people are professionals. The other 13 are amateurs. So it's an overwhelming number of amateurs. When you're dealing with amateur athletes, you have to meet them where they are. They're not getting paid. They're taking, this is their free time. This is their passion, their hobby. But at the end of the day, ideally it's helping them be better people.
Right.
They're not gonna, they're not making any money off of this. This isn't a livelihood for them. So you have to meet them where you are. There's nothing more frustrating as a coach, and it doesn't matter who you're dealing with, to want something more than someone else. And I find myself in those situations, exactly what you're talking about. This person has more to give. This person has more to give. Well, if that's not what their goals are, then so be it.
Yeah. Let's just rock and roll.
Yeah. I want to meet you where you are.
Right.
So
I have a couple questions. First question is this. You keep saying amateur and professional, right?
Yeah.
Aside from the rules of the game, right? What determines them in your eyes that you're an amateur, you're definitely pro material? Is it mindset? And the only reason I'm saying that is because I will be honest with you. Talking to the guys in here, I have seen people, right? Like, here comes the ego from an amateur standpoint. That's one. I always think ego will definitely put you in the amateur world, right? So as an amateur, I come in with an ego. I see some of the athletes that are straight up on our team, like pro athletes. This is me entering into the club, right?
Right.
And I go, there's no way that person could school me. There's no way. And then they get in the pool and it's like, whoop, and I'm like, what? Right? So my question is, the difference between me and them, or an amateur, and is it the mindset that you see in them? Is that what it starts off as?
Look, I don't think it's that.
You don't think it's mindset?
No, I think it's genetics.
This is another conversation that we had. Here we go. Here it comes.
Look, there's a great book, all you guys out there.
The Sporting Gene.
Sporting Gene. David Epstein. It's awesome. All right? And it's, this concept of nature versus nurture it's ageless, right? We've been trying to figure this out forever. Is it nature or is it nurture?
Right.
I think it's primarily nature. Nurture is huge, but it's not the biggest thing that differentiates you versus this other person. All right? Either you're predisposed to certain things that will allow you to perform better versus this person over here. We always had to say,
but that doesn't mean that the person can't. The person that's not blessed with those genetic gifts can't outperform the person that is.
Mike,
I mean, it really, I don't believe that.
if you and I spent 40 hours a week in the pool, okay, do you think we'd ever beat Michael Phelps? No. No.
His physical dimensions alone.
Yeah, there's physical dimensions as long as he's the way he responds to training is completely different.
I get it. In that same book, they did it. He did a comparison between Phelps and one of the great Kenyan runners. Same height, same build, just torso was longer in one, shorter legs, and vice versa, which got them to that's why this guy can run as long as he can run, and this guy can swim as fast and as long as he can swim. I get that, but mindset. If I say to myself, right, and I'm willing to put in the work, that I'm going to go up against a Phelps, you're telling me that I can't?
You might be able to go up against him mentally. Physically, you're not going to be able to go up against him.
But let me ask you this.
Are you serious? Not me. I'm not talking about me, but
no. Look at the very, very tip. So if all things being equal, we're dealing again. Kona is in 10 days.
Right.
The best triathletes in the world.
Are you going?
Be there. I'm going to be there.
Okay.
All right. At the professional race and at the top of the amateur race. All right. Let's talk about the professionals. Because that's easier to talk about. On the men's side, there are probably 12 guys that could win that race. So what's the difference between these 12 guys? That is all mindset. Complete mindset.
So you've just put them all on an equal playing field.
Absolutely.
So it's just a matter of whatever's going through their head. If the one dude is negative self-talk, he's probably not going to beat the other guy.
Yeah, I mean, there's
right?
little things like, how much rest did this person get? Let's say everybody came in optimally prepared, had enough rest, right?
That's me.
Oh,
That's
cool.
That's my resident wife going, "You're so wrong on this one." Thanks, honey. No.
I wanna ask you a different question.
She's really like texting me right now, like, "Yeah, you're wrong on this one." Matt's got you on that one. Good.
As a coach,
yeah,
I want to take you back to the old GDR, East Germany, Russia, the CCCP, and China. If I was to give you 26-year-olds and say, "Hey, I'm trying to make Olympics when they're 18," what now determines that? Because now you can nurture them, and now you have pretty much their nature almost undetermined.
Right.
As a coach,
that's exactly what they used to do. Let's put all these people together, and over the course of time, they refined it. Exactly. We just start weeding it out. That's exactly it.
But sometimes you're not even sure of a sport. You just have a piece of clay that's 6 years old. You don't know whether they're going to run with the ball, run and hit the ball. But you, as a coach, what would be your strategy when you're dealing with a person like me? Let's say I just wanted to come. I want you to train me, not for any particular thing, but I still want to be in a regimen where I work out, I run, my running times improve, my jumping times, but it's not for any sport. I just want to maybe live longer.
Right.
How do you approach people as a coach to where they're just a pile of clay and you can mold them into anything?
Well, and I think in that situation, if you're dealing with someone who's looking just for general overall fitness,
or a child,
right? I think you're trying to, especially a child, because this is something I think in Decatur we see every day is, all right, and I struggle with this as a parent. I've got 3 kids. I have an 11-year-old girl, 8-year-old boy, 6-year-old boy. At what point do I have any of those kids specialize? And all the data that's out right now is don't specialize.
Play soccer.
Yeah, play until they're 7th or 8th grade, right? So soccer is a great example. Soccer, you're getting great cardio fitness, fine motor skills, gross motor skills are getting exposed to different movements, spatial awareness. You're trying to expose them to as many sports as possible where you see some sort of aptitude, and more importantly is probably see some sort of enjoyment, and then foster that, and it's tough.
Let me ask you a question then.
That's a great question. Again, if there was a very specific answer to that, I think we would be seeing optimal performance and athletics from these developing kids over the course of time.
But that still doesn't, based on what he said, and I'm just talking about the kids for a second.
Yeah.
Let's just ignore like the person just wanting general fitness. You look at the kids. If you specialize, right? So I would say if Tiger Woods, get out of triathlon for a second, if Tiger Woods didn't specialize in golf like his dad had him specialize in, and he did what we were just saying, soccer, basketball, you do all this, do you think he'd still be Tiger Woods? Do you think he would still have the nature of being Tiger Woods?
I think he would still have the nature. I think his dad helped instill this relentless drive. But I think what happened when his dad passed away is he lost his North Star in so many different ways. And it's not until two weeks ago, right?
It came back, right? The mojo came back.
It finally started to come back. But what, like his back issues, all the physical issues that he's had, I guarantee you, Mike, that's a result of a kid who's been swinging a golf club since they were 2 years old. He's created all this torque, all those movements. Every single swing counts.
Right. So it goes back to that sporting gene that we're talking about. Had he not done that, right, would he still have that?
I think so. I think it'd be a great pitcher in the MLB if that's the route he went.
If that's the route. Some people are just athletes, right? So look,
yeah, I agree with that.
Right?
I agree with that. But I think what I'm getting at is I'm getting two schools of thought. Like, we have these conversations, but then I have the school of thought where you have like these really ridiculous like badasses that at one point in their life they literally amounted to nothing, and they'd even tell you those stories. And I refer to Goggins a lot just because I follow him so much, right? You're talking about a guy that was like over 300 pounds and went through 3 hell weeks to be a Navy SEAL and was terrified, petrified of getting in the water, right? And he transformed himself through through everything that he's put himself through, right? This pure hell. And you've told me a lot of times, like sometimes, man, like when you're going through it, right? Like you just have to understand, like you could be going through hell and you're just powering through, right? He went through all that stuff and he became this great, I would say this great athlete. So you're telling me what you're really telling me is that has always been there for him?
It was always there. There's no way it could not have been there physically to be where he is.
Maybe he was calling him.
You know, for someone like Goggins, and look, I don't want to poo-poo on Goggins because he is an amazing person, okay? Remember, he's elite at a different type of thing. He's elite at like the ultra stuff.
Right, correct.
Okay?
Correct.
That requires more mental fortitude than physical fortitude. Okay?
Yes, that's true.
You know, it's not the 100-meter dash.
No, it's not.
All right.
It's 130 miles in Death Valley.
You know, we saw the 100-meter dash record get obliterated by this young Jamaican kid who shows up. He's 6'6". He's got everything was there. And that's what it took.
So let me ask you one more simple question about Olympic type events. Is the United States as a country leaving it too much to chance? Meaning they really don't have a program for anything. It's left to the individual. You feel you can run, go run. In 4 years, if you're the best, we'll get you, put a flag on you, you're going to run for us. Versus, should there be a program of the East German model of saying, we do have a lot of, should we try to literally grab them and channel them?
Yeah, I don't think we could systemize it. I just think culturally, this country can't do that.
Sure,
we
can.
No.
Sure, we can. Just call Trump.
Because the next question I would ask then is, should football players at college be doing it for free?
Let's not get under that.
Right.
That's a whole nother conversation. We'll get off the topic.
I would love to talk about that. No, look, I think culturally we just couldn't. You know, we've got too much individualism in this country. We do have great pockets of success. So, in swimming every year, the U.S. swim team traditionally, every 4 years, the U.S. swim team traditionally, the very first 8 days of the games, they go out and they clean up. They set the tone, right?
Yeah.
Until diving.
Until diving.
Right, until diving, right?
Correct.
And then the Chinese come in and they obliterate everybody, you know? But there's certain pockets of sports where the systems are in place at various locations for success. Dynamo being one of those places, you know? We had 4 Olympians the last quadrennium.
Listen, man, I'll tell you one thing about Dynamo. So we were doing class one. I mean, just the fact that you brought it up, I'll say this because it comes back to memory. We were doing a spin class, and right before the spin class, he calls me into the pool because the kids were swimming. He goes, "Come here, let me show you something." He points to the pool. He goes, "It's $2 million worth of scholarships in that pool right there.
Right.
$2 million. Like, these kids were just amazing, just talented beyond belief. But you're saying those are all natural genes.
No, I mean they are natural genes who then got in the right environment and got exposed to this this place of excellence with the right coaching, the right mental environment,
right?
You know, fostering environment,
right?
That allow them to realize their potential. It's about realizing your potential. You went back, you know, Mike, you and I, again, all things being equal. You and I have got a gas tank. That's our potential. Mm-hmm. And that gas tank is, let's say, 10 gallons. Mm-hmm. All right? That's the physical side of it. The mental side of it, because our physical capacity is 10 gallons. The mental side of it then is how much of those 10 gallons can we actually utilize?
Right.
Okay. So where you might be able to utilize 8, I might be able to utilize 9. Why? Because of my mindset. So I'll go back to what you were saying. Okay. So capacity is genes. Utilization, in my mind, that's the mindset. Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah. I still disagree. I understand the capacity. I'm just saying, like, if your capacity is 15 gallons and I have 10, I get it, right?
Yeah.
Technically, you can handle more than I can. But is there a way that I can become so efficient with those 10 gallons, right, that it can take me, like, there's a certain point where it's like I get the rules of the game, the rules of nature, the rules of law,
nature,
right?
Right.
But can you essentially, and this is where, going back to Goggins, where he comes in and says, can you really bend the rules of nature? Can you go beyond that? Can you go further than that with what you have?
For certain events, sure. We always said this at Stanford when I was coaching there, is athletes don't choose events. Events choose athletes. All right? The person who can swim the 50 free can't swim the 1650, the mile, at the same level of excellence that they can swim the 50 free.
No matter how much he trains.
No matter how much they train. Typically, what we would have the girls do is we'd have the girls get in the middle of the pool. This is hilarious, right? We're talking about the time I was there, you know, there's 20 girls on the team and there's 8 Olympians in the water. You get all these really high-powered, accomplished, both athletically and academically, women in a pool, and you have them do a dead man's float. Hold your breath, get into a ball.
I'll tell you exactly what'll happen.
Some of the girls sunk.
Yep.
Some of the girls popped up like corks. Others were right in the middle. And generally speaking,
density.
The girls who sunk were our sprinters. The girls who popped up like corks, they were usually our distance swimmers. And the people in the middle were our middle distance swimmers.
Right.
And, you know, again, that probably applied to 80%.
Yeah.
You know, there was an 80% accuracy.
I mean, there's some of that truth to be. I mean, even on that swimming thing, like, I'll be honest with you, every time I had to go to practice, like, and I'm not trying to offend anybody, but it's always said that, like, black folks are more densely, you know, I mean, we have a higher bone density, so we sink, right? Which is true, because I literally have to wear a wetsuit in order to have my hips up, right? But some part of me at one point felt like, aside from the hours that I couldn't spend in the pool just because of everyday life, some part of me said deep down, like, the drive was like, if you did this enough, like, could you? Like, what if, right? And sometimes I feel like that what if can drive you to do things, to bend light, to really go beyond, right?
Yeah.
And accomplish things that you didn't think that you could.
Without a doubt.
So, I mean, it's one of those arguments that, you would say, nature's law says you can't. And I'm like, what do you mean I can't? Look at there are basketball players that are yay tall, and they're basketball players that are yay small, and they're great basketball players. What's the difference? What's the difference in the genes?
Absolutely. But he had a unique skill set. If you're going to talk about Muggsy Bogues,
yeah.
He had a unique skill set, and he used that skill set to maximize not only his performance, but his performance within what the team needed. Okay? So, I'm with you. I think we're talking about the same things. I think we're talking about it in just a different way of getting there. I think you can increase capacity, but you can only increase capacity to a certain point. I think genetics says, all right, I've got a 10-gallon tank. That's as much as I'll ever get. But what I utilize, what I realize then is my willpower.
And I think the willpower can propel you.
You think the willpower can get you 11 gallons?
Yeah. I mean, I think I can, I can pull the rabbit out of the hat if I mentally put myself in that space. And the only reason I'm saying that is because, you see stories of people doing it all the time, I feel. But anyway, here's another question for you. I'm interested in hearing this. Hardest race you've done, right? Mm-hmm. What went wrong? What'd you learn from it? And how'd you change it?
Man. So, this is, if my wife's listening to this, she'll love this one. When I was just starting triathlon, I had a buddy of mine, and this is when I was living out in Colorado.
Yeah.
A buddy of mine who was an incredible elite amateur. He the next year he turned professional, right? Yeah. So he calls me up one day. He goes, "Hey, there's this bike race called the Mount Evan Hill Climb. You want to come do it?" Yeah. Well, what is it? I was like, well, Mount Evans it's got the tallest paved road, the highest paved road in the United States. Because it summits at about 14,000 feet. Okay. Like, how long is it gonna take? So I don't know, like 2.5 hours, something like that. All right, fine. I can ride my bike for 2.5 hours. So we start off, and it starts off at like 8,000 feet, Idaho Springs. He takes off. I'm like, that's Greg. That's cool. I'm just gonna chill out here. Man, we get about it's only 40 miles. We get about 15 miles into this thing. We're above 10,000 feet. And I'm having conversations with Jesus.
That's generally how it.
It looks like the moon because you're above tree line, and there's this big moonscape, and I have no idea where I am. Am I seeing little Martians running around? And this thing went on and on and on. And I remember my wife waiting on the side of the road as she passed by. She's like, "Are you okay?" Wow. No, I'm not okay.
At all.
Now, unfortunately, Greg's up there waiting for me for an hour, right? He set the course record for the age group. He's waiting for me up there. I'm like, man, what do you get me into?
Right.
I want to go home and take a nap.
Right.
That's the hardest thing, probably. But case in point, at some point you commit to it, and you're like, the only way out of this thing is
straight through.
Straight through.
Right.
Find a way.
Got to go through hell.
Yep.
And just power through.
Figure it out.
That's crazy, man. So then, just to brag about it, so I just said earlier I did the Publix marathon this spring, right? I've always been scared of it. I did the half a whole bunch of times, never did the full, and decided to call Matt up and say, "Will you train me for this?" And he was like, "Yeah, I'll train you." I was like, "Oh, great, all right, awesome." So we did it, and I think I did all right considering injuries,
really well.
Injuries and so on and so forth. But put it in perspective, I did it in 4 hours, which I thought I was gonna break. I was gonna go sub, but I didn't. What was your marathon time for Georgia?
2:58.
Sub 3. Right? What was your marathon time for Boston?
247.
And you're doing half.
Yeah.
In
There you go.
Nah.
Mindset. It's he would say it's a sporting gene. I would say it's a mindset.
No, it's that, dude, for what you're able to do. Mike, I come from an aerobic background. I've been doing aerobic sport my entire life. You're from the islands. You probably played a little ball sports,
At sea level.
Yeah, like.
So you're saying I'm Usain Bolt and you're...
You know what? If we got into a 50-yard dash, I guarantee you'd crush me.
Yeah.
Crush me.
Yeah. You think so?
Yeah.
We go outside right now and do it. Tape it. No,
I don't
kidding.
have a fast twitch muscle in my body.
At all.
At all.
At all. This has been a great conversation, man. I could go on and on about this.
Nah, man. This is good.
I-
And guys, listen, Mike Johnson is a heck of an athlete. And
He just doesn't know it.
no. He knows it.
No, he just thinks he's a 15 guy.
Yeah. I just think I'm trying to use, I'm trying to be a hybrid, right? I'm trying to use some electricity instead of some gas.
Oh, man, you are a great athlete. It's just, amongst other things, you got so many things going on in your life. If you had all the time in the world,
Yeah, we
you
had
could
that conversation.
devote to it.
No, we had that conversation before.
You
I know
know?
we did. But it was just interesting. Like I always want to hear. It's always interesting to have conversations with you, especially about the whole genetics versus like the mindset and how we agree to disagree. But I mean, it always makes for great conversation, and I think it's something we could literally sit here and talk about for hours and just pick different situations and say, what about this? What about this? And we can kind of go back and forth. But with that being said, how would you, with our neighbors, based on your philosophy of training, like how would you, it's going to be a little bit of a difficult question and answer, I'm sure, but how would you take how you train and how you attack sports and build it into how would you make the place that we live in a better place? Because the only reason I'm asking that is because we have been going through so many different things as a neighborhood, right? As we evolve, we talk about affordable housing and this, that, and the other. And how do you make us great based on how you approach life with sports, just your athletes, everything? How do you make us a better place to live? We're already a great place, but how do you strive to evolve from that?
Well, I've never thought about it in those terms, so it's a really challenging question. My first thought to that is, let's apply just generally how I evaluate an athlete and apply that to the community. What are our goals? All right, where do we want to be ultimately as a community? What are our priorities? All right, we establish those priorities. All right, how are we going to get there? What's the training plan? What's the program in order to do that? And plan that out. And it doesn't mean that's set in stone. It just means that's how we're going to start off. We're going to start going down this path. And let's be open to listening to different ideas, seeing how we're reacting, seeing if what we're implementing from a policy standpoint is actually working in the intended way that we wanted to work. If it's not, let's iterate. Samuel Beckett's got a great quote: fail again, learn, fail again. Okay? We got to be open to taking the feedback that we're getting, again, knowing where we want to go to, and trying to learn from whatever mistakes that we've made and iterate until we get closer to that goal. That's a long, convoluted way.
No, I got you.
Very high level, but the specifics of something like that. But I think you can apply that to any scenario.
I think that's a great way to end the show. And I think I want to employ you as my campaign manager should I ever run for mayor of Decatur. Nothing against Patty. Love her to death. And she's actually going to be in here Tuesday.
Run,
But
literally.
like literally run.
Dude, you
Run
need
from.
You need to do it.
I need to do what?
Run.
Run for mayor?
No, run for commissioner. Our mayor's, it's a pro tem mayor, right?
Yeah. I should do that.
Yeah.
One day.
Come on.
One day. You'll be my coach. You'll put my marketing plan and training peaks.
I'll be your campaign manager. I'm going to make you softer.
You're going to make me softer. Hard to do. All right. Matthew Rose, where can people find you?
DynamoMultisport.com.
All right.
All right.
Are you on
Cool.
social?
Social.
You yourself?
He
doesn't really, but
I don't
I'm just-
really. But at We Are Dynamo on Twitter. Our Facebook group is Dynamo Multisport, and Insta, We Are Dynamo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And and our saying is go green.
Go green.
Yeah, it's almost like War Eagle.
Absolutely.
Sort of, but better, and a cooler color. Just kind of see. I've been influenced by the go green based on our
Green
studio.
is the color of life.
Matt Rose, thanks a lot. Mrs. Rose, thanks a lot for letting him out tonight. And we're gonna have you back soon, hopefully.
I'd love to.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for listening to Decatur FM, and we will catch up with you tomorrow. G, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Gazelle,
Yay.
thank you so much, and we'll talk to you guys later. See ya.